demonstrating the location of some uncharted rocks, as well as some charted ones. Between the two of them, though, too, they become experts in what's involved in terms of moving crew around the island, especially big crews, and what's involved in trying to manage that aspect of the race, let alone trying to figure out which head sail they should be putting up for the conditions that are out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that. So yeah, reach out to either one of the Steves. If you don't have their contact, I'm sure you could reach out to Jeff or Sylvia, and they'll pass the email or contact along. So we're going to get into this. Alex, do you want to start with just a list of the sail inventories?
Hey guys, my name is Alex. I'm a part of North Sails Vancouver, and I want to take a chance and say thank you to Jeff and Sylvia for putting such an amazing race. I've done it twice myself, had a lot of fun, met a lot of good people, and raced in a pretty wide range of conditions. And I hope everyone is going to have a lot of fun this year. Today we're going to talk about the sail inventory for the race. Mostly we're going to go for the sails, what ideally would be good to have. But if your program doesn't allow it to have more than 13 sails, it's not a big deal. Just find something that's going to work for you. We're going to talk about the mains, jibs, some kites, and Drew, can you go back one slide? Yeah. Some kites, code 0 sails, staysails, drifter wind seekers, and storm sails. On to the next slide. And for the race, I think you can walk away with the one mainsail, unless you want to have a spare main with your shore crew in case if you blow one up. In order to preparation to the race, I would probably recommend you to go over the bolt ropes and sail slides on your mains, just to ensure that sail can go up and down freely, so it's not going to cause any grief to your crew when you riffing somewhere outside of the winter harbor in 40 knots. Would recommend to check out your leash and foot lines, that you can clip them, or that Velcros are in a good operational conditions and it doesn't come off every second. Would hardly recommend to check your buttons and button pockets, especially guys with the carbon buttons. Like, I would recommend to probably wrap it up in some sail tape, because sometimes those buttons, they break, and it's very, very hard to pull those out. And check over your button pockets that all the stitching is good. Check over the bungees in some button pockets. They have bungees, and eventually they come loose and they don't hold the tension in the buttons. Definitely recommend to check over reef and reef points, and also clew, tack, and head of the sail, because those areas, they're high loaded, and you don't want to lose your reef or any other sail attachment point during the race. Also check over the high chafe areas, like spreader patches, and also areas where your mainsail leaning on the rig and on the shrouds. Usually with the sails a bit older, you can see that, you can find marks, and if you see those marks, probably put some patches on it just to ensure that it's not going to wear through on the very long downwind leg or something like that. And if you feel that your sail is getting old, it's always good practice to take a few pictures. If you are questioning it, show it to your local sail expert, and they'll potentially recommend you do a recut the leech or a luff, and bring the sail back to life. So that's probably it on the mainsail part here.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, this race, you put a lot of hours, and you just, most people just have one mainsail. So making sure that sail is ready to do a 2-week, adventure race is pretty important. So make sure that you go through it, and look over everything, and make sure that, you do have material to patch up the sail if it does fail. So I think that's pretty important. It would be nice if you do have a second mainsail, as Alex said, I'd highly recommend bringing it along. You never know what's going to happen, but saying that, making sure that one that you are going to use is ready to go is very important. Moving on to jibs and genoas. So, a lot of the time, not everybody, but, you usually would like to have a light number 1, like a medium or a number 2, and then a heavy number 3. Not all programs have that. You know, a lot of people are kind of starting to do hybrid kind of light mediums, but making sure you have a good idea of what head sails you have, and make sure you know what wind strengths you're going to be using them in. Once you figure out what head sails you're going to be bringing with you, you're going to want to look over these head sails. So things just like the mainsail, you're going to want to look at the luff tape. So you're going to check up and down the front edge of the sail. Spreader and stanchion patches, especially if you have older mylar based sails, you know, spreader patches and stanchion patches are going to go a long way, because mylar does tend to be a little bit more fragile. Leech and foot lines, you know, make sure that they're working. The last thing you need to do is have a leech flapping for 6 hours going upwind. Basically it's going to shear off the back of your leech. So make sure your leech and foot lines are working. Battens, check all your battens. You know, make sure you might even want to have some spare battens. One recommendation I got from Dennis today was, and he's always looking to save a few dollars here and there, is to take your longest batten and just make sure you have an extra one of those. So if you do have a batten spit out or break or whatever, chances are that it's going to fit in any of the other pockets. It might not be perfect, but it's going to help support the leech. Batten pockets. So you want to look over the batten pockets, as Alex was saying. You want to make sure if it's a bungee system or a webbing system, that you have it set up and the battens are functional. And then high chafe areas, so kind of similar as the stanchion patches and spreader patches. Sometimes sails hit hard things on your boat, and you want to make sure that you have some sort of material on top of the sail to take the chafe areas. And then recut and repair. So, you know, head sails definitely get a lot of abuse, especially Genoas. A lot of the time you'll see leech hook and Genoa just from it getting beat up on the spreaders and the mast. So if you do want to look at maybe putting a little bit of extra life into a head sail, especially Genoas, you know, recuts can definitely help out. So that's it I have for Jibs and Genoas. Do you want to chat about symmetrical kites, Alex?
Yeah, I just got one comment about jibs and mains. Also check over the clue rings, whereas it's a jib or a mainsail, especially on the sails what contains any carbon in it. Usually when you put those sails in the sail bag and you forget it to rinse it off, carbon and stainless steel, they not doing well together, to be honest, and they start to corrode. So if you have carbon sail, check over the clue ring as well, because sometimes under the webbing it starts to corrode and eventually it breaks. Going to the symmetrical kites, so we have a few kites here on the picture. On the left we got a reaching kite with a left shoulder, and on the right is a more balloony shape sail, is a runner. Gonna go real quick through the coatings on the sails. So, you know, some kites, they have a coating as S1, S3, S5, S2, S4. And there is a rule of the thumb, uneven numbers as a 1, 3, 5 is a reaching kites, and even numbers such as a 2, 4, and all of a sudden 1.5 is runners. So I would usually, in a perfect world with a symmetrical boat, I would definitely recommend to have all of those if your budget allows for it. Here is a bit of a polar chart for it, and you can see what kites are covering what area and what wind angles. I think, like I sailed 2 Van Isles, and some people definitely done more. And from my experience, we've been lucky enough to have all of the kites on the boat, and it was covering every single wind range. But I would definitely recommend to have a really good A3, A2, and probably A5. That would be my recommendation from my experience. And you can carry on to the next slide, I think, Andrew.
Awesome. Do you want to chat about...
I think you missed A sails.
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Alex. So same type of thing. So reaching kites are odd numbers. So A1, 1, 3, and 5. And then runner kites are A1.5. It's like a light air runner. I call it the Vancouver Special. A2 is more of a medium air runner, so kind of like 10 to 20-ish. And then A4 is a heavy air runner. So, you know, in the perfect world, you have all these sails. At the end of the day, chances are you're not going to have all these. You know, having a good A1.5/A2 is important. And then making sure you have some sort of reaching sail always, I think, is important, depending on where you think you're going to be reaching a little more would be dependent on the 1 and 3. 3 is probably a little bit more all-purpose, and then make sure you have a big heavy air sail, let alone that be an A4, A5, or an A6. You want something if the wind is up that you're not jib reaching downwind when your competitors have something else up in the air. So moving on is just, this is the polar, so very similar, to the symmetrical sails, not much difference there. So you can kind of see where the A5 and A4, you can see A5 is still a big wind sail, but it's a little bit more reachy, especially when you get down around the 20 knots. Saying that, having something that you can put up is most important. But if you were to put these sails up, these are the optimal design angles and wind strength that you'd be using them. They can obviously be used outside, but these, as I said, are optimal. Okay, on to the code 0. Alex, you want to chat about this?
Yeah, 100%. So code 0 is like, I think that to me, it's a must-have sail on any distance / coastal race. Especially boats with non-overlapping jibs, they benefit the most out of it, and they just fill up the pretty wide range of the wind conditions, like starting from true wind angle like 40 down to potentially 120, depends on the wind strength. And a lot of people actually, can you slide over to the next slide, Drew? A lot of people actually wondering, like they're saying code 0, but they don't know the meaning of it. So the code sails is a sail with the mid-girth of the sail being 75% of the foot length. And here it's kind of broke down in a pretty simple way. If your foot length is 10 feet, the mid-girth of the sail is supposed to be 7.5 feet. And with the code sails, especially if you race in ORC system, they are being rated as a kites, and you walk away penalty free, so it doesn't hit your rating unless you're using any different codes, like a code 65, 60, and so on. So Drew can talk about that.
Yeah, so I think under PHRF it's rated, but under ORC you do have to submit what type of code you have and the mid-girth. So you just submit the sizing. But under PHRF, the 75% mid-girth code 0 is determined to Spinnaker, and you don't have to send in the measurements for it. But as these code 0s have basically developed over time, we've kind of found that we like going upwind with them. And previously they were kind of hindered a little bit on performance and upwind performance due to that 75% mid-girth. So what sail designers basically did was they looked at the sail and they said, how could this be better? And it was to get rid of that extra 10 to 15% mid-girth and make it look a lot more like a jib. So, and then every time you take a little bit of the mid-girth away, the sail gets has a better ability to go a little bit more uphill. So depending on the wind conditions you're sailing and the boat that you sail, you could have a code 0, a Helix code 0. A lot of people do the Helix code 0 or a code 0 with the 75% mid-girth if they're still racing PHRF, so they don't have to leave it at the dock. Saying that, if you're building a sail inventory that you want to optimize it for ORC, you can talk to your sail designer or your local sail expert about what would be best for you. The Helix code 65, 55. There's also the code 50, and basically all that means is the 55 is actually the mid-girth. So Helix code 55 would be a 55% mid-girth. So this is just another little polar diagram. So as you can see, and they don't have the code 50, but you can kind of see it slowly moving up. So it would be just up above that code 55 kind of linear pattern there. So as as the code 0 is a little bit larger of a sail, so it's going to be working in lighter airs earlier. And then as you start taking mid-girth out, the sail is going to have a better ability to go upwind, especially in higher wind speeds. Okay. So going into Helix, so something I was talking about there, and Helix is basically a structured luff. So basically we engineer the luff of the sail to take extra load. And what it does is it allows us to change the depth of the actual sail. So the camber. So you're able to use a sail that's a little bit more versatile, because either with halyard tension or any sort of adjustment with a Cunningham, the structured luff actually helps the sail flatten out. So as they're saying, you're using less sails when you do use Helix technology. And the reason is you can adjust the sail shape. Okay. So if anyone has any questions about Helix, and we're doing them on upwind sails now as well as downwind, we're doing them in 3DI as well as our sport panel. So it's a pretty cool technology that's kind of evolved the last little bit. And it kind of started with free flying head sails, but it's transitioned all the way down into local club racing boats. And a lot of people would prefer versatile sail, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, where if you had 5 different head sails, you'd be changing them all the time as we rip around islands. So having a sail that can go from 0 to 14 or have a larger range really kind of helps out, not only not having to purchase more jibs, but having a sail that's going to work in more conditions. Alex, do you want to speak about the Spinnaker Staysail?
Yeah, I gotta. Do you want to come up a few slides up? Just have a bit of a comment on Helix.
Yeah.
And
On here?
that's no, two slides back. Yeah, here we go. And with the Helix, so Helix essentially the technology is made the way that your luff of the sail being supported by the sail, not by the luff rope, as before we would have like a luff rope. And now all the loads, they're supported by sail itself. It allows to have more shape in the sail. It reduces the load from the rigging. You don't have as much of a sag on the luff. Before with the luff ropes, going into like higher angles, let's say 70 degrees apparent wind angle, like you would get a bit of a sag on the end of the sail. Helix technology, it eliminates it. It holds the shape better. You don't have your tip of the mast falling off too much. And overall thing, I think it reduces the tack load probably by almost like 50% or so, which is less wear on your rig, your sail, and your hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you don't have to hear the big creaky, scary noises anymore. You don't have to load that head stay up as much as you used to due to the engineering, the luff of the sail. Awesome, Alex. Do you want to chat about Spinnaker Staysails?
Yeah, Staysails, as a lot of you know, it's becoming very, very popular sail. It's always been a popular sail, but recently it's got a second wind, and they're very beneficial for spinnakers. They're very beneficial for code zeros. Pretty much in any apparent wind angles between 40 to 90 degrees angle, they're very, very beneficial. And I think that a lot of people ask question, when do you put it away? I think I have a rule of thumb, depends on the boat, depends on the displacement of the boat. Usually 150 degrees true wind angle is the time to put your staysail away. The benefits of the staysail, you get larger sail area, you get way more stable bow situation. It's just counter forces on the bow. You don't have to react with the rudder and with the tiller too much to it. It just can hold everything a bit more stable. Especially, I think the very prime example of benefits of the head of the staysails is on a TP50 series. If you round the windward market first and you don't put your staysail up, by the time you're at the lever gate, you're probably going to be in the last place. And you can see those guys using those sails quite frequent, and sometimes even in a different weight, class weight, and so on. Those staysails, you can fly it off the head stay, you can fly it off the pad eye in the middle of the boat. They can be stored in the bag or on a small furling gear. So that's about it on the staysails here.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that's a true story actually that Alex was saying about the 52 circuit. Ross McDonald was in the loft the other day picking some sails up, and he was telling us that story. We were kind of asking about what size of boat and everything and angles when we were putting this presentation together, and he said, it's about 5%. So 5% in sailing is a lot. Prime example, if you don't put it up, you're in last by the leeward mark, and they're only doing windward leeward. So kind of shows how important it can be. So we're going to talk about the Windseeker and Drifter. So actually, we were out doing some work at the Polar Bear series, Alex and I, and we snapped a picture of one of the 52s here with their Windseeker Drifter up. I'm sure everyone's seen these conditions in the Pacific Northwest before. So basically, a Windseeker and Drifter, I think, any sort of racing program or sport program in the Pacific Northwest heading, I always find getting a code 0, most of the time, and then getting a drifter or a Windseeker is pretty important to keeping the boat moving in those light to variable conditions that we tend to see quite often. So it's the best drifter is the exact same size as your largest head sail. Saying that doesn't always work depending on how you're setting it up. Some people have roller furlers, so they don't want to be putting another sail up and down the roller furler. So you can free fall them like you can see here. A lot of the time the Windseekers or drifters are kind of set up to sheet somewhere around the cabin top, the mast butt area. And that just kind of helps when you're tacking. A lot of the time you're just trying to find the wind. But making sure you have a sail cloth, like some people just have like a Spinnaker sailcloth. And I find that's great to help find the wind. But once you really want to get the wheels moving on the boat a little bit. So making sure that you have some sort of like a laminate, like a very lightweight laminate would be important to just be able to take the strength and not turn into a balloon and get the boat moving so that you can peel while the boat has some boat speed. And you can keep that momentum going. So I've done it before where I peeled to the J1 too early and the boat completely stops. Then everyone's smoking past you with the drifter up. So I always find making sure they have a good drifter that is made out of a laminate product so you can carry it in a little more wind than you would a traditional Windseeker, which would be made of a Spinnaker material. Perfect. And then we're going to get into Storm Trysail and Storm Jib. So this one always, depending on the race, everyone has, questions about this and how they want to get set up because this is more of a safety thing than a performance thing. So I'm sure Jeff and Sylvia could speak to that, but I'm going to go through basically what you need. And then at the bottom, there's the offshore special regulations link. So I can send that out or Jeff can send that out, but you should all have access to it. And you'd want to go through your sails and make sure that you meet. So I just kind of highlighted a few things here, but there is basically a page full of different regulations that the sails need to have, such as the Storm Trysail sail numbers and all these things I didn't include. So I'd recommend every team getting someone in that position to kind of take care of the sails and make sure that the storm sails are ready. So Storm Trysail, so you can get a Storm Trysail or you can actually use your mainsail, but you need to, if you are using your mainsail, you need to reduce your left by at least 50%. So you can do pretty easy math there with a measuring tape and a calculator and figure out where your reef point is. If you don't want to get a Storm Trysail, you can always add a reef to a sail. So that's 99% of the time you could add a reef going into the race, or you could get yourself a Storm Trysail. Basically, the Storm Trysail area has to be no greater than 17.5 of the mainsail hoist times the foot length, okay, in terms of sail area. So they're relatively small, okay. Another one that kind of adjusted, especially during the Vic Maui and whatnot, in case if you have a boat with an in-mast trailing mainsail, the Storm Trysail shall be capable of being set while the mainsail is furled. So you need to have a separate track on the mast itself to be able to hoist your Storm Trysail. A lot of the time, those T-tracks. You just kind of put them beside the slot that your sail rolls in and out. So you can't just roll in your mainsail to 17.5%. You have to have a Storm Trysail. Heavy weather OSR max jib. So this is something that every boat needs. Basically the area, and it's usually around 85%, but basically you need an area of 13.5% height of the 4 triangle squared. So that's the sail area that this sail needs to be in. For majority of boats, it's around 85. But if you are getting a sail built or if you're having a sail recut for this, you want to make sure that you check out the calculation so that you don't build one too big. Storm jib, so even smaller area, 5% of the height of the 4 triangle squared. Okay. I think after 2012 or something, they need to have some sort of bright corners on them. Most of them are made out of orange like heavy weather storm material, so it's easy to be seen. And then both these heavy weather jibs basically need ready available means independent of the luff groove to attach to the stay. So most of the time you'll see grommets on these sails, and what that allows you to do is actually strop the sail around the forestay. So if the forestay, the luff tape pulls out of the forestay, the sail isn't going to tear away and come back into the boat. It's still going to be attached to the forestay. So both those sails need to have that. Okay. So I'm sure there's probably going to be more questions about the storm trysails or storm jibs or people getting prepared. But those I would recommend going online, checking out the offshore special regulations and figuring out what you have and what you might need. And reach out to us if you have any questions. Alex, you want to go through the prep list? I think this is pretty important, guys, for getting a boat ready to do a race around an island for 2 weeks. Making sure that the boat is prepared is pretty key to make sure that you get all the way around the rock.
Yeah, so we're gonna touch base here probably on one of the most important areas. It really depends on what conditions your boat at the moment. But I think the biggest thing, like inspect your rig and the mast. If you have a chance to pull the rig out, maybe have a look before you go into the race. Just inspect everything, check the rods are fine, the swedges on the wires are okay. The spreader bars are good, and also spreader tips, because sometimes those break on the older boats. Check over the shift boxes and shifts itself, very, very important, so your haulers can go up and down and you're not going to lose the shift sometime outside of Vancouver Island. Check haulers itself, that you don't have any big damage on the high chafe areas around the splice area or around the clutch area. Definitely check out the clutches and winches. They're all in good operation conditions. If your clutches are a bit old, check out the jaws on them, that they're not worn out. Usually you can get replacement ones if needed. Check out the winches, that the poles are good and the springs are good, because sometimes those springs and the winches, they lose their ability to bounce back, and all of a sudden your Winchester is still like a free spin in one direction. Operational traveler and jib cars, sometimes those ball bearings being covered in dirt and salt if you don't drain them every time after you come back after sailing. So maybe rebuild the cars, put in new ball bearings in it, and put it all back together. Other deck hardware as blocks around the collar of the mast, and other hardware, whatever you may have on the deck. Making sure that your rig is tuned properly, at least to the base setting, and that everything is straight, that you got right amount of rake and right amount of pre-bend for your sails. Calibrate the electronics so you can get accurate readings during the race, so you can choose the right sail, so you understand angles right, especially at the nighttime. It's very helpful. Race ready bottom for the boats with old bottom paint. Definitely would recommend to put some new paint on to make sure that you're always fast. As people say, a clean bottom is the best friend of tactician. And check over the lifelines to make sure that your crew is not going to go for a little swim. And safety gear, and also furling gears. It doesn't matter whereas it's a in-mast furling gear or it's a head sail furling gear, or especially A sails and code zero furling gears, because if they break, and usually they break in a very awkward times, it's very hard to put sails away. So I would definitely go over this boxes, and it's going to give you a general idea of what's going on. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. Do you want to go through this extra running rigging parts?
Sure. From my experience racing around the Vancouver Island, definitely beneficial to have light kite sheets, like super light for the wind, like 4 knots, especially when you go downwind. It's beneficial to have something really tiny, what's not going to pull the clew of the kite down. Spare sheet for the jibe peels. At least this is my preference, to have a spare sheet so you don't need to disconnect anything, and a snatch block for it would be great too. Short sheet for close halt / reaching always helps, especially if you don't have some boats. They have blast reachers or jib tops in their sail inventory, and some boats don't. And if you don't have those sails, it's definitely benefits to have the short sheet, so you can re-lead your jib on the outboard jib track, or a pad eye, what is set up somewhere on the side of the boat in a right position to hold the correct leech tension on the jib. Code zero or kite tweakers, they help a lot. They help a lot, especially when you go to the higher apparent wind angles. So you can just bring it down. Essentially, it's going to lead as a track in a way. You can just pull it hard, and the leech with the tension up, the clue is going to come down, and you're going to avoid that flop on the leech too. So it's very beneficial to have that. And the chafe sleeve on the hylards, it's very, very beneficial, especially on the main hylards, because main is going to be up 100% of the race. So yeah, that would be my recommendations on that.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. So I just want to quickly chat about like a sail repair kit. So, you kind of got to be a little bit self-sustained going around this island. And sail repair kit would be something that you would want to figure out before you take this adventure. So things that I would have in my sticky back, and I'm actually going to start from the bottom, is you kind of want to make sure that you have a dry storage bag or container. Pacific Northwest can be pretty wet and wild, especially if you're offshore on a boat. So making sure you put all these things inside of something that's going to stay dry so you can keep these materials. I guess on a sailboat, nothing always, not everything stays dry, but at least you're giving it a good attempt. So then you're going to want sticky back. So that's basically like a giant sticker made out of sail material. I find Cuban is the best and the stickiest, and basically that's just for temporary repairs to keep the boat going, or smaller repairs, or keep the sails going, I should say. You're gonna want a palm, wax thread, and some needles. I say more than one, and make sure those stay out of the water too, because they rust up pretty quickly. So I don't know how many times I've asked for a needle and got an old rusty needle that was about to snap, and that was the last one on board. So making sure you have more than one needle is pretty important. Spinnaker repair tape, everyone's gonna have kites on their boat, and things do happen a lot of the time with kites. It's a little tear here, a little tear there that catches a stanchion or a lifeline or something on the way down. So making sure you can repair that on the go is pretty important. A splicing kit. So, depending on what type of lines you have on your boat, you might want to have a splicing kit on board, as long as you have someone that knows how to use it. A spare batten. So I already chatted about this in the jib. You should probably have some spare battens for your mainsails and your jibs, easily accessible, just for replacement. Extra slides in cars. So people that have mainsails that are either using slugs, slides, or cars, you probably want to bring an extra one or two along with you, and just for the reason that if they do break, you can sew them back on. And then, as I said, the last one, you want to make sure that you put all this stuff in a dry storage bag or container, so that it lasts you the whole race. This stuff is not inexpensive in any means, and if you just kind of throw it down in the boat, it's probably going to be wet and ruined by the time you get back to Nanaimo 2 weeks later. And pretty important to speak to that. I know Jason had a question earlier in the chats about if North Sails was going to be supporting the event with the van. So I can't speak to that right now. I don't know if we'll be as lucky as we were in the past, be able to rip around with everybody and help support the race right there in terms of sail repair. We're going to try to figure something out, but we haven't had anything in stone, but we'll keep you guys updated. We'll reach out to Jeff and Sylvia. We'll make sure that there's a plan that if sails do get damaged, that, that they get fixed and returned, and make sure as best we can sailboats don't retire from a race due to not having sails to compete. Okay. So now we get to the exciting part. I've got Ian here and Phil as well. I'm gonna just see if I can unmute them, or if they can unmute themselves. Let's see if Phil
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Phil, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Sure can.
perfect. So Ian and Lloyd, they kind of represent ORC Canada. They've done a great job here in the Pacific Northwest the last so many years, kind of helping people get ORC certificates, answer questions, and get this rating system on the go. And I've put the website up there. So if you do have any questions, you want to register, that's the website you want to go on first. After you get on that website, if you do have any questions, which you might have, you can reach out to either Ian or Phil. And there is Phil's email there, rating@orccanada.org. Reach out to him. But do you guys want to speak to basically this race and anything that you guys want to chat about with the sailors?
Sure, I'll be brief. Thank you, Drew, and thanks to Jeff and Sylvia for putting on the race. There are lots of competitors here, I'm sure, who already have ORC certificates from 2022. So we will be running the new test certificates for using the 2023 VPP over the next few weekends for our Canadian friends, and for our American friends. I saw Chris Tutmark on the line earlier. He manages the U.S. Sailing's offshore side, and I'm sure if you drop him a line, you can work through a certificate through U.S. Sailing. So for new Canadian boats, it's not a terribly scary thing. Ian is a hardworking volunteer will help competitors, new competitors, through the process. And really, what we're trying to do is get the best sense of what configuration your boat is in order to fairly determine its speed potential and then handicap it. In terms of resources available to racers, the ORC website, which is www.orc.org, has lots of great stuff on board. I'll clip into the chat the most relevant one, I think, for new competitors and competitors, that mainly highlights the responsibilities of owners in terms of what they need to declare, that sort of thing, and regarding the rules while racing. That's the document that I've just posted to the chat. There's a section 2, rules that apply while racing, and then there's a section in 3 of owners' responsibilities. Chris noted earlier that ORC requires all sales less than 85%. So those code sales, best to declare those sales. Now the big buzzword is all head sails set flying. So any of those loose luft head sails, Spinnaker Staysails, Genoa Staysails, or so those are aft of the head stay. Any of those head sails set forward of the head stay as well should also be declared. It's not terribly difficult. We can North Sails has been an excellent resource for ORC, providing great measurement data. So hit those guys up and hit up your local sailmaker as well. They're excellent resources for information. For those wishing to Canadian competitors wishing to apply for a new certificate, not having had one before, please hit us up at that email noted there, and we'll start the ball rolling. And as I say, it's not terribly scary. We'll work through it all together.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil. Ian, do you have anything to say, or do you think Phil kind of took care of everything?
The only thing I'd add to that is if you're new to ORC, crew weight does factor into the boat performance, and so you do need to declare your maximum crew weight. It's okay if you're under, but you can't sail with more than what's declared. I believe the Van Isle uses the number of people aboard as times 85 kilograms as a rule of thumb.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate that. So yeah, if you haven't gotten an ORC cert, or you have any questions, these are the guys. They know what they're doing, and they can help you out, get sorted. And that's something you definitely want to do before this race, or it's mandatory. We're about to get into the question period. One last thing I wanted to touch base on is during that sail kind of talk there, if you do see that you have a hole in your inventory, or you're kind of thinking about adding a sail before this race, I would reach out to your sailmaker now. All the boat shows are about to fire up, and delivery dates usually 8 to 12 weeks. We're 4.5 months out. So if you crunch some numbers, you've got a little while to get some sail orders, but it's always nice to make sure that sail arrives before the race, and you're not sweating to leave the dock without a new sail. So that's just my recommendation. I really appreciate everyone coming out. I'm going to read through the questions here, and then if anyone wants to add questions, feel free, go into the chat. Other than that, we'll kind of wrap it up with Jeff once we're done this question answer. So I kind of answered that question about Jason Saunderson was asking about if we're going to be supporting with the van. We'll be back in touch regarding that. Chris commented that ORC wants all sales of less than 85 to be declared. So Phil just kind of chatted on that. So that's just kind of a comment there. Randy asked, what is a code 0 tight upwind apparent angle? So those numbers was in that polar diagram there, Randy, and I can forward that over to you. It really depends on what mid-girth you're going for. And then that will adjust, your polars for that sail, or the optimized wind angles and wind strength. So I'll bounce it over to you. Chris, again, just clearing up, ORC requires all sails less than 85% half width relative to foot length ratio to be declared. So any sail that has less than 85%, and that basically means anything that's not a spinnaker in sailmaker terms. So any rule of thumb for Randy actually asked a question about any rule of thumb for tack loads for code 0. So if you are having a code 0 built, reach out to your sailmaker, and they should be able to source that. Usually also, depending on which furling unit you're going with, you can speak with the rep or the distributor about questions about how large a lot of the furling units will come in different units, like a 1, 2, or a 3. And then depending on the size of your boat and what the application you're going to be using that sail for, whether it be a free-flying asymmetrical or a code 0 or a top-down code 0, you'll kind of figure out what furling unit you'll need, and they can kind of lead. So I would say reach out to your sailmaker / rigger or manufacturer of the furling unit. Phil sent, if anyone's looking through the chat, Phil actually sent the rules. I think that's really important and shouldn't be skipped. So I know a lot of people like to watch the Sydney to Hobart. I'm sure everyone kind of knows the example that happened. We don't need to speak about the boat, but there was a rule infraction that was brought up after the race and after the prizes were given away. So someone that's in charge of the sales on any of these programs should be looking through the ORC rules, because they are different than IRC or PHRF. So you want to make sure that you're going through those, because the last thing you need to do is do a 2-day, 140 nautical mile leg and then be disqualified due to flying a sail incorrectly or using a sail that's not declared, or any of those rules. So make sure that you read through those rules. You can just use that link. I think that's pretty important. Next question was from Ben. Any major changes to the ORC rules for 2023 that racers should be aware of? Is there any chance I could get Phil or Ian to comment on that? If not, we could probably reach out to them personally, but Maybe they want to speak to that.
Sorry, Drew, I missed the question. Would you mind repeating
Yeah,
it?
my apologies. I'm probably speaking a little quick. So any major changes to the ORC rules for 2023 that racers should be aware of? Any big changes in the last since Christmas?
No big rule changes. There is a focus on compliance with the head sail set flying issue that's reared its head down south, but we want to ensure that boats are in compliance with that part. It's a new VPP or velocity prediction program. Each year that gets done, updated and refined as a function of the previous year's research. So a more tuned VPP is in effect, but that's about it.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Ian actually just commented as well about the ORC speed guide. So when you do submit your ORC, when you get the cert, you actually get the speed guide, and it's a valuable tool to use for your upwind angles and sail selection. I think you use that as a starting point, and then you go out and see how your sails work and perform in, underneath the angles and everything that the speed guide kind of recommends, and then kind of fine tune it off of the speed guide. But the speed guide's a great starting tool in terms of where you should be, making adjustments in your sails and your sail changes and your reefs and all that other stuff. So it's kind of like not a free, but it's a polar that they're using to rate your boat. So it's a very good start. Ryan Haynes asked if we could share this deck with the attendees, and I'm assuming the meeting chat is what he meant by deck. So I'll try to copy this down and I can share it. So the slide deck, sorry. Okay. So this is actually this is recorded, so it's gonna go up on North Sail's YouTube page tomorrow. So this whole slideshow will be on YouTube tomorrow with the audio and everything. Oh, sorry. And Ian says you actually, this is my fault. You actually purchased the speed guide through the Sailor Services. So the speed guide you do need to purchase. I think it's pretty important to have, especially if you have more than a few head sails and more than a couple of kites with a code 0. Definitely pretty important. Well, other than that, I think those were all the questions. We're going to pass it back to Jeff and Sylvia just to say goodbye to everyone. But thanks so much, guys, for coming out tonight. I think this is one of the best races in the world. And I think, we're 4.5 months away. So it's great that everyone kind of got together tonight and chatted. I appreciate you guys listening to us. We're just trying to help everyone prepare for the race and kind of get your minds around, what's going to be happening in 4 months and start the preparation process. So I'm going to pass this back to Jeff and Sylvia to say goodnight. Thank you guys, everyone, for showing up. And Jeff and Sylvia, would you like to say goodnight?
There you go. I think I unmuted. Good night. No, we want to thank Alex, Drew, Louisa from North Sails for putting this on. Drew, the one thing I shared with you beforehand is my phone's literally been lighting up for the first 10 minutes with folks that couldn't get on. So if you can forward that link for YouTube, I'll make sure it gets out to all the skippers tomorrow for anybody that wasn't able to get on tonight. And Ian and Phil and Chris, I see Chris is on here. Thanks again for everything that ORC does and for making a relatively seamless process work pretty smooth. And again, thanks Drew and Alex for putting up all the contact stuff so that people know how to get a hold of everybody. Other than that, yeah, I think Drew said it well there at the end is June the 2nd is going to be on us fast, very fast. And trying to get your boat ready and the crews ready and all that sort of thing, it's a real process. We wish you the best of luck in getting that done. And if there's anything that Sylvia and I can do to put you in contact with the right people or to help you out, feel free to reach out to us.
I just wanted to mention that we had a Zoom call with Drew and is it Louisa?
Yep.
And the question that was put to Jeff and I was, could you describe the race? Okay. And before we could even open our mouths, Drew piped up and probably blathered on for 5 minutes about how wonderful the race was. And we couldn't even say anything else. Your enthusiasm for the race, Drew, is amazing. I really enjoyed the webinar. And Jeffrey and I generally, we are very excited. We're just getting over COVID, both of us. We've been down for about 3 weeks. So I'm sorry, we've been answering the phone and not really sounding like ourselves, but the communities are really excited we're back, and we're really looking forward to this race. Thanks to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks. Have a good night. And this is recorded. I think we had a bit of a cap in terms of how many people were allowed in to the Zoom call. So if one of the other fellow sailors, I'm going to send this link off to Jeff and Sylvia, but it will be online on our YouTube channel. So everyone have a good night, and hopefully we'll see you on the start line June 2nd. Cheers, guys. Thank
Cheers.
you.